Hi, my name is Susie Delier, and I'm with the Idaho Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. I'm the youth coordinator as well as the chapter leader for Idaho Youth Move. Today we are going to be talking to some youth about how to help your child balance school, extracurricular activities, and their social life. I will be here as an interviewer as well as asking for more detailed answers from the youth who have joined us today, and I want to thank you for being here. This is an hour program, so now I will turn it over to our youth members.
Hi, I'm Eric Walton. I'm a member of Youth Move, and I'm here to talk to you about mostly balancing public school and social and extracurricular activities. So we're going to start off with a lot of the stressors.
Oh yeah. Hi, I am Colin Clossy. I am what he said.
We're going to start off with talking about a lot of the stressors that come from being in a public school. For me personally, the largest one and probably the one you'll hear most commonly is homework. Colin, do you want to talk about homework?
Just in general, like now, or
Yeah. All right.
yeah.
So, homework is probably one of the biggest stressors that your child will have when in a public school. Teachers are relentless with this. Oftentimes, they'll get agitated and irritated because they have too much homework and they feel overwhelmed and like they can't get it all done. So another really common stressor in public schools is what I like to call teenage drama. It's where some of their friends at school will maybe act in certain ways that makes them feel angry or irritated as well.
And would you consider the drama, the talking, the hallway conversations as part of that goes into the social aspect of school?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. And as far as homework, what would you say on average in a week would you have homework for? How many hours?
A lot. There was, depending on the week, if there was a final test coming up, the teachers would normally dump lots of homework on you, so you were looking at 2 to 4 hours a night, and the rest of the time it was between 1 and 2 hours a night.
And how are you in any extracurricular activities at this time?
Well, I do this.
Yeah, like meaning related to school or...
Well, not even relating to school. As far as when you're talking about extracurricular activities, that can be part of school, or it can also be things that you do outside of school, and that's usually what it is. It could be music lessons, it could be band, it could be soccer,
Dungeons
sports.
and Dragons.
It can be Dungeons and Dragons, right? Which also go into part of the social aspect of school. Not even of school, but just of your life.
I learned to play the piano, and that requires another 1 to 2 hours a day of practicing. So you mix that with homework, and you're looking at 2 to 4 hours when there aren't big tests coming up, and then even more time when there are tests coming up. Okay.
And so as far as where you guys are at, so you practice the piano for 2 hours a day, an hour to 2, is that what you're saying?
I try to.
And if you have, so you go to school from what time to what time?
My school starts at 8:05 and gets out at 3:40.
Okay. But you don't only go to a public school, you go more to like a...
public charter school.
A public charter school. And so it is a little different, right, than a public school like... If you're in Boise, it would be like Eagle High School or Centennial, Bora, that kind of thing. So you go from 8 to 3:30, and then you have 2 hours of homework, and then you have 2 hours, an hour to 2 of piano lessons. So how do you fit in the social aspect of school or of your friends and family?
Most of the time, I try to spend time with my friends on the weekend, and during the weekdays, I communicate via text messaging and email. But there isn't as much time to actually go and physically meet with them.
And how about your family?
I don't see much of them. My mom works a lot, and so normally the conversations that we have are like over the dinner table, maybe half hour to an hour a night while eating dinner, or every once in a while we'll go see a movie together, or things like that.
And so within trying to balance that, your experience with school and doing homework and some of the other stressors of drama and all those things, how can a parent help with homework? Let's start with the first stressor.
One of the things my mom does that was always really, really nice for me is particularly with math homework. My mom is pretty good at math, and so she can try to help me work through some of the problems that I don't understand, and that's always really nice. She will proofread some of my English papers for me because she's an English teacher. So
well, that definitely makes it nice.
That seems terribly handy.
Yeah, but just like being there to help you work through things that you might not completely understand is nice.
Okay. And Colin, do you have any experience with that?
With
homework and trying to balance?
I never really had terribly much homework. Like, I never took AP classes because I knew what I could handle and what I couldn't, so I never bit off more than I could chew. With the exception of finals, I never had terribly much homework. But on finals, it was basically I just had to suffer for a couple of weeks, and then be done.
And I think that's an important part that you make, is that when a lot of times youth are pushed to take on as much as possible so that they can get the best grades with the best accolades, so that they can get into the best schools when they graduate.
Don't take more than 2 AP classes at a time. Just no.
And there are youth who, like my younger brother, who took AP and honors and college credits and all that stuff, and so he excelled in college pretty quickly. Where when you had me, I could not do honors or AP with the learning disabilities I had. Getting B's and A's in school were incredibly hard. And that was something that I as well understood. And my mom made sure that she talked to me about and made sure that, again, I wasn't taking on more than I could be able to succeed at.
And that's a really good way that parents can help their youth, is by sort of monitoring that. Like, maybe the youth won't know their limits and they'll try to take on as much as possible, and that's not always healthy. So for a parent, it can be good to sort of help your youth figure out their limits and what they can handle.
Right. Thank you, Colin. So what are some other ways when it comes to homework? So, we've stated not taking on more classes than you can.
If you do take on classes, it helps if you have friends or someone else who knows if it's a light homework load, heavy homework load.
And what does that look like? How would you find that out?
Well, in high school, it's harder than in college. In college, there's ratemyprofessor.com or something like that, which will say how much homework they assign, among other factors. So that was always handy to check for.
I checked that for all my
for college professors. Like, I have my history teacher, he never assigns homework. Like, you are held accountable for some of the stuff that he posts on Blackboard for the final test, but you can take that at your own time, and it's not even that obscure. So if you know area of history that you're studying, you're gonna do fine. But it's like if you really want to study, it's not terribly much, and it's mostly just YouTube videos. So you just put that in the background while you, I don't know, cook.
In the high school, one way you can check for this is you can talk to the teacher. First of all, I've learned that if you ask a teacher like how difficult their class will be, they're normally pretty honest with you. And you can also talk to maybe people that are like a grade above you, and they'll be pretty honest with you. They'll be like, oh, this teacher assigns blank and this teacher assigns blank. And maybe it's not even the amount of homework, but there's also different types of homework as well.
Like a math worksheet you just sit down, plow through for a couple hours is different as opposed to
an essay, which you have to sit
a
down
one-page
and write.
essay, which you have to then do research. It might take more to do the essay than for the math sheet, because math sheet's just repetition, what you know, and maybe a couple of rules that you're unfamiliar with. But
Yeah.
essay, it's have to research it, have to organize, have to write, have to edit, and many more steps.
What happens when you talk to a teacher and they say, well, my class is difficult, and I assign homework, a lot of homework, and I expect it to be done on time, and this is what the homework looks like. If someone would struggle with doing that, especially youth who have learning disabilities,
Hello.
then
only
what can they do?
to only take one of those at a time is what I did. I only have like one or two. Like we had English, but she was more lax about not so much due dates, but just how like length of essays or whatever. Like it's like if it's 3/4, she'll count it as a page. So that made it easier there. And then math, I always had, it was get done by tomorrow, which was the one thing that I had to grind on. But all my other classes, with the exception of occasional, oh, I need a paper, or hey, fill out this worksheet, or whatever, most of that work was done in class. So like for high school, unless you get unlucky with the teachers available, you should have a few for each subject that are just like, well, we're going to do most of it in class. There's a little bit of reading or whatever that you have to do out of class, but it's just reading. It's like, if you have a hard time reading, then that's a separate issue. But it's, assuming you don't have dyslexia, it's not terribly difficult.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I do, because in my high school classes, there have been required classes where there were teachers that assign lots of homework and large amounts of homework, and I can't just choose not to take those classes.
Right.
So one of the things that I do is I make sure to, first of all, prioritize, get the assignments that you can get done quickly. Try to help your youth sort of figure out which things take more time and which things take less time, and then help them sort of plan out what order they're going to do their homework in. And also, if they're super stressed about the homework, don't try to make them do it, because when they're stressed in that state, their brain's not going to be working as well as it could be. So
let them take a half
sometimes,
hour to blow off steam or something.
yeah, sometimes it can be beneficial to give them like a half hour to sort of calm down, remind them that everything's going to be okay, and then have them approach the problem from a new perspective.
And I think that's important to say, because a lot of times, especially with mental illness, if you get to that point where you are completely overwhelmed, your brain's no longer processing in the way in which you can have a lot of logical thought and complex thought. You're kind of in that fight or flight zone. And it takes a while for your brain to calm down enough for you to go back and say, yes, now I can look at this math problem, or yes, now I can look at this essay. And that's something that we're not really taught happens to our brains. And so when we get to this overwhelmed state, a lot of times it's like, no, you have to do it. You have to do it now. You got to do it. Well, it takes a while for an adolescent brain to calm down enough for them to actually be able to do it. So taking breaks is really important, especially if you're in that heightened sense and you see your child in that heightened state of mind, to then, maybe take a walk or let them play the piano if that's something that calms them down. Whatever they have as a coping playing basketball, just dribbling the ball, whatever they need to and they have to kind of calm down so that they can then go back to their homework and sit down and be able to actually be able to do it.
Yeah, I'd agree with Susie there. For me, there are days when I have to regulate this myself, where I'll get home and I'll have an English essay to write and 2 pages of math problems to get done and a chemistry worksheet I have to work on and, a bunch of other homework. And I'll just be sitting there and I'll be going through the list of things that I have to do, and it'll be kind of overwhelming. And then I'll say to myself, Eric, calm down, take a break, and then when you're done taking a break, only think about one of the things that you have to do. Don't focus on all of them, because if you focus on all of them at once, you're just going to get overwhelmed again.
So then what you're saying is that
I take a break, and then I
only
pick
focus on
one thing to get done. And then after I get that thing done, then I move on to the next thing.
Right.
Also, I want to point out that having a lot of sleep helps with this. Just in general, as a rule, sleep is good.
Try to make sure you are managing your life well enough to make sure that you can get those 8 hours of sleep a night. I know I can't function without at least 8. Yeah. So.
Or if, during homework time or whatever, it's just so much stress, just take a nap for 20 minutes. And then, assuming you don't spend the entire night asleep, when you get back up, you get back to it.
Well, see, and that's something that would happen to me. I would start doing homework, and I'd get so overwhelmed with everything that I had to do because I couldn't process the information at all. And I would just immediately, my head would hit the table, and I would pass out. And not pass out like, I blacked out, but I would fall asleep because I literally couldn't process the information, got too overwhelmed, and just decided I was done. And then, of course, my mom would have to come after about 15 minutes and kind of wake me up and say, okay, so let's take one chunk at a time.
Really just focusing and putting your homework into time blocks, say I'm going to do the math from 5 to 6, or I'm going to do my English essay from 7 to 8. Trying to help your youth learn how much time different types of assignments take, because if they know how much time it'll take, they can learn to sort of plan out their homework schedules.
Yeah, and that's important because our youth, don't know how to manage time a lot of times, and they have to be taught that skill. It's not something that we just get programmed into knowing. And so helping at the beginning just to help plan things out and help them stick to that schedule will not only give them relief, I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong or share an experience with it, that they have a regimented schedule where they know when they're doing and how they're doing it at what time, but it also helps them develop those skills for later.
No, for me, that's really nice, because knowing how much time I need to spend on homework a night also lets me know how much time I have to de-stress, get rid of my stress levels, and so it lets me know okay, maybe I have to spend 4 hours of homework tonight, and I get home at 4:30ish, so I know, okay, I have 4 hours of homework, which means if I need to, I have an hour and a half of time that I can take to just relax and relieve my stress levels.
So then I have a question. What can parents do to help their children who are struggling understanding homework and understanding the materials at school? Because some parents might not understand the material as well. Because, honestly, I have my nephew who's 11 who asked me help on math, and it's stuff that I haven't done in 12, 13 years. And to help them with that is very difficult. So what can parents do to assist their child with that?
Something that I would say is if you parents have the time for this, talk to the teachers and try to see if the teachers can explain the material to you. There's also, in terms of math, there's online resources. If you have the time, Khan Academy is great. You know, watch like Khan Academy videos, or like look up videos on how to do the problems on YouTube and see if you can sort of learn to do it. And that way, if you can learn how to understand the material, then you can help your child on it. And if you don't have time to learn all of that material, because I know there are lots of parents that have to work as well, and you know, have to balance other things. If you don't have time for that, maybe recommend to your youth that they find those resources as well. Like that they talk to their teachers, or that they find YouTube videos that can help them explain it.
What always helped me when I was struggling with math was my mom would take a quick read of the textbook and just see if she could explain what they're saying in a different form, because if I'm reading the textbook and it's slipping through my ears without leaving a trace, I'm not going to understand it. But even just having someone read it out loud was helpful, because then my brain was actually able to think, okay, that's a structure of a sentence. That's a number. That isn't a number, but it's supposed to be a number because imaginary numbers.
Oh, those are the best.
So then what, because in my own experience, you know, I would go home and ask my mom for help. And then when she tried to explain it to me, again, I couldn't process it very well. I would get very upset and angry. And I'd cry and tell her, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not teaching me the way my teacher taught me. And I am not someone who can go online and look at resources and watch videos and understand it. I have to be there with someone doing step by step by step. So if a youth who might be a little bit more like me, who has a hard time with their parents assisting them with homework, what can a parent do to help their child?
Maybe look for a tutor or something, because
Okay.
like, either an older student who's already taken the class, or someone in the class who isn't struggling. Just have your see if your student can ask your student to find someone that doing that, and then just ask them for help.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe try to tell them to bribe the other student with like a Dutch Bros gift card or something.
Yeah, one of the things that I always found to be helpful in classes that I would be struggling with is if I had a friend that understood the material, I could go to them for help. Or for me, it's more often than not, other people at my school will come to me for help on the material, because I understand a lot of it. But it seems to help them a lot to just have another teenager who like sort of speaks in a similar way and in a similar manner, explain it to them in terms that they understand. And sometimes it can be hard for parents to do that.
Right. I was very fortunate because my best friend from grade school through college, and we're still best friends, was incredibly intelligent and very book smart, which I struggled with. And she was the only one who would be able to sit with me with, you know, the ADHD and me wanting to move around and talk about other things. She was the only one who was able to sit down with me and help me move through my homework in a fashion where I did not fail. And so I found that incredibly helpful for me as a child and as a youth, and then in college, to have someone who's my age, who I knew was really smart and knew what she was talking about, explain it, and to sit there and help me process it in a different way than what the teacher might have explained it, or even my parent, how they might have explained it. Right. So then let's move on to extracurricular activities and social life, and how can we incorporate that?
So in high school, homework takes a lot of time. To incorporate sort of social and extracurricular activities, the first thing that I've noticed is that weekends are the freedom zone. They're the zone where you don't have as much homework and you also have a lot more time. So, if possible, try to plan lots of extracurricular activities for the weekends. And then if you are planning it during the weekday, just sort of try to help your youth make sure that they're not taking on too many extracurricular activities so that they fill up all the time that they need to do their homework with sports or practicing a musical instrument or, things like that.
Like 1 or 2 weekly things that, would be considered extra work, like sports or music practice. And then if they want to join like a D&D club or something like that, that's not terribly much work. But if it's something that requires extra practice and extra work outside of what they put in wherever they're at, just so that way they have the freedom to still, I don't know, watch a movie, sit on the couch for an hour just staring at the wall. Well, I don't know what people do for entertainment, so just so that way they still have time for that. Like, because otherwise music practice, like my brother I'll hear the odd, tuba noise coming from the basement like every couple hours, and it's just like, oh, well, there he goes again. So and that takes up a bunch of his time, and I know from experience when I was briefly in band, that's what kind of could put me off of it, was just I had to put in so much extra practice, and I kind of resented it. So don't have too many extracurricular activities that require that much extra practice.
Because then at that point, what ends up happening is if you are, like, say in band where you're having to spend an extra, let's say it's 4 hours outside of the band practices, and it's probably more than 4 hours, I would say.
An hour in a day.
But if it's a thing where you have to spend like an hour a day practicing, then that cuts into time that they can just spend entertaining themselves, or time that they're communicating with their friends, or time that they're doing homework. And so if you take on too many of those things, say you're in band and you're also in sports and you're supposed to exercise for an hour a day because of your sports practicing, then that's 2 hours a day that they now can't do other things with.
However, the exercise they can do with friends or whatever. So it's like,
well, yeah.
If you, the parents, want to go jogging with your kids or whatever, I mean, I don't think it would do you any harm. So,
Gee, Colin.
Well, two birds, one stone. 3 birds, technically.
Well, yeah, and do you think that with the extracurricular activities that, you end up being in, like football, basketball, volleyball, band, can that mesh into the social life?
It can, yes. A lot of the times I've been on a few sports teams myself, and you tend to become really, really good friends with the other people on your team. And so, yeah, that can mesh with the social life. And at practice, then the extracurricular activity also becomes a social activity.
Okay.
But if it's just an extracurricular activity, just like I've always wanted to, know how to play whatever instrument, so I'm going to join the band for that reason, and you don't mesh with the people terribly much, then it only like having one activity where it's like almost a chore to do the practicing or the warm-up, don't push them to have more than that. If they're not expressing that much interest in band or orchestra or sports, don't force them, because otherwise it'll just be resentment or boredom at the best.
Well, I think it's also important that you look at when the sport or the extracurricular activity is. So in school, I did marching band during the fall, and then during winter, concert band, and then in spring, I would do golf. But it was right after school, an hour to up to 3 hours of practice. And that wasn't accounting the homework that I would have to go home and do. And I had friends outside of like the golf team and the band team that, I ended up not being able to spend as much time with, though I did make friends on both teams. So I think also looking at when is the sport or extracurricular activity and what season is it. If you have, soccer and basketball happening at the same time, and your child wants to pick both, that would be very, very difficult to balance.
Yeah, like as a personal rule, I don't have any extra. I try to limit my extracurricular activities when I know I have finals coming up. So because I know that I'm going to have to start spending a lot of time studying for finals and doing homework for finals. So those normally happen in the spring, so I try to avoid spring sports if possible because I know that I've got finals. And likewise, if I am going to play a sport, I would prefer to do it in the fall, right when school is starting up, because for the first couple months of school, they're really just reviewing the stuff that they covered last year, I've found.
Yeah, well, once you get to college, that's not true, but yeah.
But in high school.
High school, yes.
In high school, the first couple months of school are just them reviewing.
Unless it's either an elective or science class generally besides a week of just, okay, you remember everything from chemistry 1. Here, now we're on chemistry 2. Get used to it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also if you start in the fall, what's kind of nice is that you start your schedule off from the very get-go. So you are already establishing from day one what your schedule and what your regiment is going to be for the rest of the time. If you do just a spring sport, then you have all of fall and winter to get used to one schedule, and then you have to then transition into a completely new schedule halfway through the year, school year. Or if you just do fall, then again, there's a completely different schedule in spring if you decide not to do spring sports.
But normally that schedule's easier to get used to because in the fall you would have, say, 2 hours a week blocked off, and then all of a sudden in spring you have an extra 2 hours of time. Mm-hmm. And you can then allot that time how you choose.
Very true. Very true. Now, how about for parents who do work and things like that, and they do not wish to have their youth at home alone for hours on end until they get home?
So my mom used to take me into the office with her when she would work. That was always really fun. But it was also kind of helpful because I would be in the office with her, and, well, I wasn't in a place where there were much entertainment devices, so I would use the time that she would bring me into the office to do my homework. And then the time that she was at home, I could spend doing social things or extracurricular activities. My mom is also my piano teacher, so it kind of worked out well. But that's the way I sort of balance that is... and then the other thing is you can plan the extracurricular activities for the times that you'll be at work. So say you have to work from, say you get off work at 5 o'clock. You can arrange for them to do an after-school club that gets out at 5:30, and then you're in a position where you can pick them up from that social event or extracurricular.
Some schools offer designated study time after schools.
Yeah.
Which, even if they don't have anything, they just read a book and just sit there, which is what I did anyway, so that didn't terribly upset my social plans. But as far as just trust or having kids on their own in a home, it's if you're not comfortable having them there, then it's there are a lot of ways you can keep them busy, or if they have a friend that you do. You trust them going to their house or their parent is home or whatever, you could send them there if that's cool with all involved.
Which is something that I ended up doing from elementary through middle school. So I'd go to my best friend's house because her parents were home at the time that we would get off of school. And then we would do our homework, and then we could play.
Yeah.
Of course, that was when I was in elementary and middle school. When I went to high school, and then I had after-school practice, pretty much, from then.
Yeah. So yeah, like going to a friend's house works really well. After school study groups are also normally good. And a lot of these things balance in. They could both count as time to do homework or time to socialize or time to do extracurricular activities.
It's kind of whatever you need.
Yeah. So if you do have to work and you don't feel comfortable having your child at home, then it becomes even a little bit easier to fit in all of the different parts of life that your youth needs, because you can plan things around your work schedule that then fit one of the needs that maybe they don't normally spend as much time in.
So then, as far as social life, how can parents help balance that, and what are some of your suggestions on the stressors of it, pretty much the stressors of having a social life while you're in school with extracurricular activities?
Stuff like that.
Oh my!
That's only if we get into teenage relationships, which never.
We
end well
kind
in
of
my
have to get into
experience.
here because it's social life.
Well, so just as a general rule in social life, there's lots of drama that comes with it, and there's a lot of things that your youth might come to you with and be all like, oh, well, so-and-so said blank, or, so-and-so is being passive-aggressive, or, things like that. And you might be sitting there thinking, oh, that is such a stupid problem. They should just get over it. Believe me, there are times when I'm with my friends where I'm like, that is such a stupid problem. You should just get over it. But to them, it's not a stupid problem, and it's really stressing them out. Maybe because especially in high school, there are people that change, and so maybe somebody you've been friends with for like 7 or 8 years is now being a complete jerk to you. And you're sitting there wondering what you did wrong, why they're being this way, so on and so forth. And so the drama behind that is all like, in high schoolers are cruel. They're cruel people. And there's a lot of times where you'll just get into social conflict with one of your friends. Maybe your friend will say something that you didn't like, or maybe they'll do something that you didn't like, and it causes that conflict and that turmoil, and then you're feeling stressed out because maybe your friend doesn't like you anymore, yada yada yada. And again, they all sound like really stupid problems, but they can be very stressful, even if they are
helps.
stupid
It helps to
problems.
just have someone listen to the stupid problems, so like they're not stupid.
Yes.
And maybe once you understand all the sides of the issue, it won't seem as stupid. It might still seem as trivial, but I don't think it'll be as stupid.
Right, because one of the things that we talk about within group is a lot of times we don't want to hear advice.
Yeah, we just want someone
We don't
to
want
listen.
someone to fix our problem. We just need to.
Unless someone says, help me fix this problem.
Yeah, then that's when you're reaching out and saying, I need help.
Then you say, I fix.
But it is hard, especially for adults. You work all day, 8 hours a day, maybe less, maybe more. You have all your stressors at work. You have your coworkers that you're dealing with and all those things. Projects and all the stuff that has to happen. If you work with customer service, you got all kinds of people calling you with all kinds of things going on. And you go home and you still have to do dinner, you still have to clean the house, you still have to pick up your kids and all these things. And then you have your youth come and say, well, I can't believe it. It's the end of the world. Jimmy hates me. I don't even know what I did. And it can feel very overwhelming. And like, really? Really? You don't even like Jimmy. So what does it matter? But it is. It's very important. It's important to your child. It's important to your youth. And at that moment, that can send a youth over the edge as far as, especially with mental illness, if they're going to have anxiety, they're going to have that anxiety attack. And then you're trying to get them to do homework, and they're ruminating, and they're thinking, and they're going over everything, all the history with Jimmy and how that worked and what went wrong. And so it can be very difficult.
If they used that brain power to try to solve math problems, it's all like, let's see, I'm going to use the entire power of my brain to figure out what I did that made Jimmy mad. Now wait, if I directed that instead to solve math problems, I'd have all my math.
Since when have we ever had control over what we obsess about?
Exactly.
Right.
But
to humans, we don't really work that way.
And I think that's important to state. We really, the control in which to switch our brains from one to the other is not always as easy as we would hope it would be.
Yeah, there's not just a button that says math or science or history.
Anything but Jimmy.
Yes.
And so, as parents, you can't always sit there and be perfect and be like, oh, tell me everything. Yeah, let's sit down and go over all this stuff. Sometimes you just don't have time for it because you're overwhelmed as well. But the more that you can show empathy, the more you can listen and be there, the easier it gets for their ruminations and some of their stuff to calm down enough so that they can then refocus on something else. And also it helps with building constructive thought patterns on how to assess a situation and then how to develop a plan in which to move forward from, Jimmy hates me to, is that true? And then what can be done, and allowing them to try to figure that out.
So that in the future they don't have quite so many fixations on things that we would classify as petty problems.
No problem is petty. So, okay. We have some questions about some homework information. Did you guys want to answer that now before we move on into more?
Yeah.
Sure.
So the first question is, how might parents prevent a manic episode over frustration of homework?
I think I am good at answering this because I've had quite a few of those. So a lot of the times what would happen with me is, particularly with, it wasn't so much doing the homework itself as it was when I would get grades back and I'd be like, this teacher graded this paper unfairly, or, but also in the homework process as well. I would get really, really frustrated with a problem, and I'd start throwing pencils around the room and, throw my math book or whatever. And one of the things that my mom helped me learn how to do is if I was starting to get really, really frustrated, I slid my chair back or whatever I was sitting in to do homework in, I stood up, and I left my homework there, just sitting there. And I went away. And I did, something for 10 to an hour, however long it took for me to calm down. And then when I came back, my mom would go over whatever it was that had frustrated me, in detail, and she would help me work through it step by step in a way that made sense to me so that it wasn't frustrating me anymore.
And one of the things that I had to learn, my mom went to college at the same time I was in school, and we would sit together and she'd have her homework out and I'd have my homework out, and again I wouldn't throw anything, but I would cry and this is terrible, I'll never get this, I'm gonna fail, all these things the whole time I'm doing my homework. Sometimes I would just fall asleep, a lot of the times, and part of what would happen is I would become so anxious and so overwhelmed that I would sit there and I'm like, I need a break. I need to go. And my mom, she would look at me and she goes, oh, good, because I need a break too. And she would get up and she's like, let's go for a walk. And we would go for a walk, and she would listen to me as I say, I'm going to fail, I'll never get through school, I'll never get to go to college. And she would just listen and be like, okay, well, I know you feel that way, but let's keep walking. And when I calmed down, we'd go back, and then she would sit down and she goes, well, let me know when you need another break, because I always need a break. And that kind of helped with my anxiety as far as being able to tell my mom, I need a break. So before I got to that point of being so overwhelmed that I was crying and falling to the floor and, rolling around in despair, I would be like, I need a break. And I felt comfortable saying that because I knew that she would respond to that in a positive way in which she would take me away from the homework, let me say whatever I need to say, and then bring me back and say, okay, let's do our homework again.
I don't have terribly much to contribute to this subject.
So then, how could you help a child with focus issues, ADD? How can you guide their focus onto the schoolwork?
I got this one. Good luck. No,
Horrible way to say
basically, the only way I ever got through homework was just by grinding. Like, I was on pills for a while, but then due to unrelated medical issues, I had to get off of those. After I was off of the pills, I noticed it was better. Like, I just gotten better over time. However, when I needed it, getting up for a walk to reset helps, because then you can sit back down, refocus, and pull back in. Just tell them to work on one problem at a time, because what I always had trouble with was the transitions, like between problem 1 and problem 2. Like, I'd finish problem 1, then I'd sit there staring at problem 2 for 20 minutes thinking about, I don't know, Star Wars or something. And then I'd realize it's been half hour. I've spent 3 hours on this homework, and I'm no near finishing because I'm still on problem 2. And then eventually it'd just be even just coming by to say, hey, if you're done with that one, move on to the next one, or where you stuck every so often would definitely help. You might have gotten a little bit defensive when I was asked that, but if you notice that they're not moving terribly much, you'd say, hey, are you stuck or spacing? Because if they are trying to get the homework done, which they should be, then it might help them snap them out of the reverie of just, this world, not the other one.
One of the things, so when I'm in my mania phases of bipolar disorder, I kind of have some focus issues. So one of the things that works for me is my brain has trouble focusing on one subject at a time. So I'll be working on math for a little bit, and then my brain will just have trouble focusing on math. So I'll switch over to my English homework and focus on my English homework for however long that focus lasts. And then maybe I'll switch to my science homework for however long I can manage to focus on that. I just keep on switching between the various different homeworks that I have, because I know that I'm not going to be able to focus on one for an hour straight. So I focus on it for maybe the 5 minutes of focus that I get in. And then when I can't focus on it anymore, I try to switch my focus into something else. And maybe just trying to guide that switch, if you're having trouble focusing on this, maybe try doing your English homework or your math homework or your science homework or history or whatever other homework they might have.
Yeah, and one thing that helped me with the ADHD is having a timer. And so I would have it timed for 10 minutes on this subject, and when the timer went off, then I needed to switch to a new topic or a new subject and work 10 minutes, and then I'd go to the next one and just keep going to all the different ones until the homework was finished. And then, with my attention span being 30 minutes, usually at the max when I was younger, I would have to take those breaks. And so making sure those breaks are in there for your child with ADD to do something active, and make sure that it's okay if they're doing their homework and they stand up or they're bouncing around, maybe getting them a medicine ball.
A fidget of some sort.
Right.
But do not let them have a computer or phone within arm's reach, assuming that their homework isn't on the computer. If it is on the computer, then just
makes it a lot harder.
Check every so many minutes that they're not on YouTube again.
Yeah.
Because that's where I wind up. I still wind up there. I'm trying to do, anthropology, and it's just, I wonder if anyone's posted anything in the last 5 minutes. Flip over YouTube. Oh, sweet new video. Oh, yeah, it's an hour long. I'm going to be here for a while.
And making sure that whatever space they're doing the homework is completely silent. If people are coming in and out, if there's a lot of banging, a lot of noise,
Oh yeah, distractions
Or-
don't help.
Distractions make it really
alternatively, having music that they know, if they want to try this is something that I do when I need to just get into a mood and just crunch and just get stuff done. Is I will find music that I think is appropriate for whatever I'm doing, and like if I'm doing science, like some sci-fi ambient noises or something like that. Like nothing with lyrics, nothing vocal, terribly like. If it is a faster paced song, I generally listen to the non-lyrical version. Because if I'm listening to lyrics, I'll tend to write the lyrics. Because I'll forget what I'm thinking, and then yeah. But it's if it's music, that can help block out other noises and also quiet down any other noises like that are being generated inside the head, like Because if I'm not hearing music or someone talking, my brain starts saying, "Okay, what random song am I going to pull up from memory today? The gum jingle."
And they have headphones that are sound canceling, so outside noise doesn't get in, and you can put white music
so
on
cool.
and things like that. You can get, like the office boards that go around. You can get that, and that's like their study area where they sit and do things like that, so they're not seeing some of the distractions going around.
I find that classical music always works really, really well for me, particularly the more calming songs, because it can help sort of soothe the random nature of my brain.
Right. Okay, so we have 2 more questions. A busy life requires good nutrition. How can a parent help support their busy child nutritionally?
Make sure to buy lots of vegetables and don't buy junk food. I have learned from experience that if there are potato chips with an arm's reach of a teenager, then those potato chips will not exist anymore. They'll be gone before you can say, I don't know.
Me and my brother sat
anything.
either side of a potato chip bowl. It was gone within 5 minutes. Neither of us knew where they went, but we were the only ones there, so...
So what do you do about that? Because, let's say both parents work, or if you're a single parent, you're working all the time, and to have the time to be able to nutritionally help your child.
One thing my mom did for me is she had to work a lot, so she sort of taught me how to cook a few basic recipes that I thought tasted really good and were really nutritious. And they take maybe 10 to 15 minutes to prepare on average.
And I know of a couple quick and if just as far as nutrition in general, I know of at least one really easy to do. Takes a half hour of setup, and then you just stick it to boil for however long. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So
and you can just leave it, provided you notice if it's boiling over, if it's boiled down to where there's no water left.
So, teaching them to cook is a good way to help them balance nutritionally, because generally, if you have to spend time to cook it, it's generally not junk food. I mean, unless it's cake, then,
This is cooking, not baking.
Right.
There's a difference. Baking, yes, it's going to be unhealthy. There's sugar in there. It's baking.
One of the things that we would do, because it was very difficult, because, I would go to school at 6 and I wouldn't get home till 7 to 8. My mom and I would watch cooking shows and pick recipes that looked really kind of fun to do. And on Sundays, we would make the food. We tried to do it Saturday to taste it. And if we liked it, then on Sunday we made a whole bunch. And we put them in, bags or in Tupperware, and have them for 3 days out. And so I knew what I was going to have for breakfast, lunch, and if I didn't get home in time, dinner. And I can just go into the refrigerator and it would be labeled and I can get it, because honestly my mom worked just as much as I went to school and did extracurricular activities, so we did not have a lot of time at all to be able to come home and cook for the next day, and every night cooking for the day ahead was just not part of the schedule that we could maintain. So we made pre-made meals, and we call them meal preps, and if you're into fitness, you know what a meal prep is. And we would just schedule it out, and you'd have a yogurt and granola for breakfast and so forth and so forth. But you at least always had your lunch made and ready. Okay, so what if your teen doesn't want parental help?
That can be a tough one.
Yeah.
One thing that I would say is, if they're working on homework and they don't want your help on it, then just let them, like, again, with the online resources and friends that can help them out with it, try to guide them towards those things. And if they're just really, really adamant that they're not going to do anything you say, then, well...
Reverse psychology. Tell them not, I don't know.
No, but at that point, there's not really a whole lot you can do, and eventually they'll realize that they will need help on things.
But that can be very difficult, because I do know
Pride
of
is a
teens
stubborn
who, even when they know they need parental help, at that point, they're just like, I'm not going to ask for it.
Because then they'd have to come down to... So keep offering it, but maybe not insistently. Just like calmly, just say, hey, if you're...
If you do need help, I'm
here. I have this set up.
And the other way is to also make it their idea. So if you know that they're struggling and they're having a hard time with something, and you have an idea of, maybe they need a tutor or maybe they need to do something, a lot of times, adolescents, they really are trying to gain some independence, and their brain is forming, and they're feeling that pressure. And so sitting down and saying, what can you do to make this work? If I'm not in the, if I'm not assisting you, that's okay if you want to handle this, but give me some ideas of what you're thinking you can do. And then try to help them process that and find the best way. But make it their idea and have them kind of describe how they're going to go forward with that. Because we do that in group, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do that a lot.
Sure.
I don't make the decisions.
Yeah. You just highly recommend them.
And psychologically manipulate
Yeah,
us into
no,
thinking
you're right.
they're our ideas.
I mean, they're good ideas, so I'm not complaining, but...
But we do come up with a lot of stuff ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times adolescents, they do have good ideas, but they're afraid to say them. And so sitting down and having that conversation of where they can go. And they might get upset about it and defensive. I always got super defensive with my mom asking me any questions. But even asking a mentor. So let's say your child's in an extracurricular activity. Talk to the coach and say, would you mind sitting down with my child and doing this? Or asking...
Although maybe have them do it in private so it's not humiliating for the child.
Well,
if you have to talk to
group.
if you have to talk to the coach one-on-one with the team, it's a little bit humiliating. But if it's just a, hey, can I have a quick word with you, and then just, hey, your parents asked me, we'll check that. Are you to help you with homework or whatever, or just whatever it is, the message you want to say, but not in front of any social group that will judge, because otherwise they will hate everyone involved.
No, and that's what I mean, though. Talk to the coach on one-on-one and say, I do have concerns. Do you think you might be able to talk to my child? Because it's okay to bring support into that. It's okay to ask for assistance in helping your child succeed. There's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. A child does need one person outside of the family to believe in them and to be there for them. So it's okay to bring somebody in just to have that conversation. If they're not going to listen to you or they don't want your help, it's okay to then say, well, who do you trust and who do you feel safe with? And then bring that person in. Great. So is there anything else that you guys want to say as far as a closure to this webinar?
Bullying, just because that's an extra social stress that gets put on top of...
Honestly, we could probably do an entire webinar on that, bullying.
Yeah.
Okay, we might do an entire webinar on that, so saving that for later.
So is there any final thoughts? We have 1 minute.
No, thank you all for your time.
Yes, we want to thank you for joining us today. Youth Move is very excited to be part of this and to have people ask questions and to watch. And hopefully our next webinar looks like we might be doing bowling, so that will be very interesting. If you have any further questions or concerns as far as the webinar, please feel free to email us and let us know. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, internet,
Do we
website.
do we have any other things?
Yes,
that
we
we're
do.
on? Okay.
Yes, we do. So thank you, and have a good rest of your weekend.